to break down the day's events and try and work through what it might mean in the future. We've enlisted the help of Terry Barnes, our social policy analyst, who's had years of experience working with the federal government in Canberra and is a former advisor to the now Prime Minister Tony Abbott. Terry, good afternoon to you.
G'day, Will. How you going?
I'm well. We all sort of thought this was coming at some point or another.
Yeah,
were you surprised when Jacqui Lambie got to her feet this morning that this was the day?
Look, I wasn't surprised at all, and I think you talked about soap operas and reality shows. Basically, Jacqui and her advisors set up the whole process leading to this morning's announcement really from the middle of last week. So basically, the soap opera kept the spotlight very, very firmly focused on her. And you might recall when we spoke a couple of weeks ago, I said that she was the most popular, most powerful person in Australia.
You did, yeah.
You chuckled, you laughed. But I think this shows how powerful she is at the moment.
Yeah, well,
and it's a dangerous sort of power, in my view, just as much as I think it is in yours.
Are we clear on, and I wanted to play in full some of her comments this morning, so we weren't debating sound bites, and I think it provided a little bit of clarity about her reasons for leaving the Palmer United Party. Are you clear, as a keen political observer, on why it is that she has quit PUP?
Well, I think it's basically a clash of egos. Clive Palmer has a huge ego, there's no question about that, but Jacqui Lambie, I think, has started to believe her own publicity and thought that she is bigger than the game, that she is bigger than the country, and that somehow by her going independent, she is going to be a much better leader of our nation than she could have been under Clive Palmer. But look, the reality is that politics is about ego. It's about using that ego wisely for the benefit of all Australians, that you basically use your skills and talents. And I just don't see that, other than digging her heels in about the Defence Force pay deal, that she's got any particular skills and talents to actually give us. I know that's cruel. I know that's hard, but she has done things the hard way in her own life. But that does not give her a blank check to basically determine the future of the nation's political agenda.
I'm torn on someone like Jacqui Lambie. On the one hand, I like that the plain-spoken Australian has a place in politics in this country, that it's not some ruling elite that is beyond the reach of most Australians. I like what she represents in that way. But I was this morning trying to counter her contribution to public debate in this country against the sort of media focus on her and everything she's had to say. And I must say, the only thing I came to was all those public comments about the Defence Force pay deal. Beyond that, it's all been about obfuscating the real issues in Canberra, either deliberately or not so.
I think that's broadly right. I mean, she may be inspired by the other group, Tasmanian independent senator we all remember, Brian Harradine, and the way that he was able to twist the arms of both the Labor and coalition governments to get a better deal for Tasmania across the board on a whole range of things, including, you might recall, back in the early Howard days, the sale of Telstra.
Yeah.
I don't think that, but he had been around the union movement for a long time. He'd been in politics for a long time. This is an inexperienced person who's just come up Struggle Street, and there's nothing wrong with that. But she needs to learn the ropes before she decides that she can call the shots.
Terry, what do you know about global allowances and staff allocations for being an independent as opposed to being the member of a party when you're a senator in Australia? Does it change at all?
Actually, it all depends on the government of the day.
Right.
And my understanding is that the independent senators there at the moment have got extra staff members to help them with the load that they take on. And I would expect that Jacqui Lambie would probably be offered the same deal. And if she is able to recruit some extra advice in her office to help her on policy, and not just her chief of staff, who seems to be the Svengali of her operation, that actually is a good thing, because at least she can try and be better prepared to consider legislation bill by bill, one at a time, and actually try and form an informed view.
Terry, could you break down for our listeners what the paradigm as it is now with regard to a government trying to pass legislation through the upper house in Canberra? How tricky is it?
Well, basically with Clive Palmer and his group of 4 senators, if you include the motoring enthusiast Ricky Muir, that was a block of 4. You need 8 to get over the line in terms of getting your legislation up. But with that block of four, you're well on the way there, because your Family Senator Bob Day in South Australia, David Leyonhjelm, the Liberal Democrat in New South Wales, are pretty well aligned to the coalition if you think about it. And Nick Xenophon, I think he probably is now the most powerful man in Australia, because he seems to be able to organise he's the Senate whisperer at the moment. But basically, it's broken down into four blocks of two. There's Xenophon and the former DLP Senator John Madigan. So they've been working together. You've got Bob Day and David Leyonhjelm. They've been working together. You've now got the two Palmer United senators who are left working together, and you've got Jacqui Lambie and Ricky Muir, who could go anywhere depending on who talks to them at any given time. So it's going to be a lot harder for the government to get its legislation through without reorganising itself and taking a bit of stock, I think, about what it can get through and what it can't. And that may mean making some hard decisions about compromising on issues that are very important to it or to its budget. And that could include the GP co-payment, which I have some previous association, as you know.
You certainly do. We've spoken about it at length in the past. Jacqui Lambie interestingly said today that she will maintain that position of not voting it in under any circumstance. We heard her say that just a moment ago.
But she can't maintain a position in the national interest of voting against every bit of legislation that comes before the Senate. I mean, that is bloody-minded. It is, frankly, stupid and selfish. With respect to commitment to the Defence Force pay deal, and hopefully the government can actually look at that and revisit it. Maybe they will as part of the new regime they're dealing with. But to actually reject any positive proposals for the future of the nation is not only unprofessional as a senator and a legislator, it's I think, un-Australian.
It seems to be a rejection of the concept of the horse trade, which is, to the layperson, how business in the upper house has been conducted forever and a day. Would you prefer to see her enter into negotiations that would trade off something like Defence Force pay against the GP co-payment?
Well, I'd like to see the GP co-payment get up, don't get me wrong. But,
of course.
But
is it sort of...
Will, that's exactly right. I think a great German politician, Otto von Bismarck, once said that politics is the art of the possible. It's being able to deliver things. It's not just wishing for pie in the sky. It's actually being prepared to get in there, compromise, do a deal to get most of what you want. John Howard used to say 80% of what you want is better than 100% of nothing. Yeah. But Jacqui Lambie doesn't realise that. She is going to be a failure as an independent, no question.
Just a last question before I let you go, Terry. You anointed Jacqui Lambie as perhaps the most powerful person in Australia when we spoke a couple of weeks ago. Political scientists are suggesting that she's pretty safe as a commodity going forward and an influence in the political realm, given her popularity, name recognition and all of these other factors. What do we think about the future of the Palmer United Party in the wake of this, who suddenly have been marginalised in the Senate?
Look, I think the Palmer United Party was basically a collection of individuals that bankrolled by a megalomaniac, to be honest with you. And that is basically imploded once some of those individuals realised that they had minds of their own. I mean, credit to Jacqui Lambie for that. But look, I think the other side of it, Will, is that, and I'll give you my prediction for next year, and that is that we will be having a double dissolution election. I do not see that the government can successfully get to its full term dealing with the Senate split that it has to deal with at the moment.
They won't be doing it with the polls the way they are at the moment.
Well, look, I think that's the risk they have to take. But I think look, the government's midterm polls are always going to dip. Things will improve. If they get their act together, they will chip away. But it's going to become all or nothing. If it's a question of survival, it may be a case that the parliament becomes so unworkable, and I think it will, that they will have to look at a double dissolution. And if that happens, I think as far as Tasmania goes, because the quota for a senator is going to be half of what it normally is, that Jacqui Lambie would actually be re-elected. Yeah. I mean, that's the irony of the whole thing.
When typically when there's a double dissolution, you see a great many of the independents and minor parties eradicated, but certainly won't be the case in Tassie.
But it may be the threat of a double dissolution is the best thing that the government has got going for it at the moment, because those minor parties and independents basically have to think about what it means for their own futures. it would be almost certain that David Lionhill in New South Wales, for instance, and maybe even Bob Day wouldn't get back in a double dissolution scenario. So they might be asking hard questions that might make them more willing to work constructively and compromise where appropriate with the government.
Terry, it's always fascinating speaking with you. We appreciate your predictions, and we'll look on with interest as this recent episode of the soap opera unfolds in Canberra. Thanks for your time.
Pleasure, Will. Thanks a lot.
Terry Barnes, a former policy advisor to the now Prime Minister Tony Abbott.